Welcome to the DS Show. Hello, and welcome back to the DS Show. Today I'm joined by a fabulous guest from our EPM industry. Mitch Aist is a model builder coach. He is an independent consultant. He's also a good friend. And I would like to welcome him to the DS Show. Thanks for coming on, Mitch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Daanish. Great to be here. Great to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. I think it was about 2 years ago that we first met, and it's been great to see all of this cool stuff you're doing from the My RSI Live series, as well as some of the thought leadership you've been putting out on LinkedIn. I've been keeping up with that, and it's great to connect again.
Yep.
Amazing. So, to kick us off, would you like to kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself? People who may not know you, a quick kind of background and glimpse into what it is that Mitch has been up to and where Mitch has been in the past.
Absolutely. So I have grown up in the Denver, Colorado area, and I have been an Anaplan consultant building Anaplan models in various capacities for the last 6 years, going on 7. I've worked at small consulting firms mostly, and then really realized in the last couple of years that I perform best when I'm independent. And that has its ups and downs, which we can talk about certainly. I've also, you mentioned my RSI Life, the blog that I run. It's up on YouTube still. I do make a video about once a month, and I use that platform to teach people how to use a computer hands-free. That's a skill that I've developed over the last 3 years or so, and it's something I take a lot of pride in. And I think there's a strong need. What I learned when I was forced to use a computer hands-free, I learned that there's not a lot of great tutorials. There's not a lot of folks talking about this online. So it's still a pretty small blog. I just passed 500 subscribers last year. Woohoo! On YouTube. So I'm still hoping to put out some content when I can. It's you can imagine editing a video when you can't use your hands on a computer is pretty tough. So it's slow going, but it does bring me a lot of joy, and I get a lot of really supportive and constructive comments on that channel. In between, and that's what I do, in my free time when I'm not actively consulting.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And Mitch, I remember when we first met, you had shared that story, and I remember feeling so inspired and having you just re-mention your story. I'm like, man, this is fascinating and so incredible. What a story, right? And the fact that you keep such a positive outlook on things, and you're willing not only to, in a way, you're kind of accepting who you are as a person, and you're not afraid to put it out into the world and give back to others who may be in a similar situation as you.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been interesting just dealing with myself, if I could put it that way, because I miss the old me. I want to be extremely ambitious like I used to be. I see a lot of my old colleagues being so successful and, big positions at big companies. And I just have to remember that's not me anymore. I have taken a role that I was meant to. And sometimes the old me comes up, and I just have to just know that he's in there, and that ambitious side of me does come out, and I just have to make sure that I use that constructively and not to the detriment of my health like I used to.
Yeah, that's truly incredible, and we thank you for sharing your story with the world and serving as an inspiration for those that may be dealing with similar limitations, and you're providing them inspiration on how to capitalize on the tools that they may have at their disposal.
I hope so. Thank you. That's really nice.
Yeah. So before we dive into some of those, some of the questions I had around, like in your introduction, you mentioned some of your entrepreneurial spirit and where things are with that. I just wanted to ask, like, what does a day look like for you working? I assume you're on the computer a lot. Of course, we're on the computer right now.
Yeah.
What does a day look like for Mitch?
So I basically wake up every day at the same time. I'm up at 6:30 a.m. I'll take my dog for a walk for about 20, 30 minutes. And then I'll come back and usually get an hour or two of work done. I'll sit at the computer. I don't always use my hands free. I've been kind of talking like I always do, but I use a stylus, which has been a super handy tool on my trackpad on my laptop. So that doesn't irritate my condition as much. After about an hour or two of work, I'll go and make breakfast. I usually eat the same thing every day. I eat yogurt or brown rice with some peanut butter and some eggs. Then I have some meetings. Usually, if I'm actively on a consulting contract, I'll go and service the client, and that's usually about 4 hours a day. I haven't worked full time since I've became independent, which has been uh, really great in my opinion. I think that 40-hour contracts are pretty restrictive, and the culture around how you become employed is just really rigid. And excuse me. Sorry. The culture around employment contracts is really rigid. And I've had a lot of discussions with recruiters who are kind of shocked sometimes when I say, do you have any 30-hour week contracts? Do you have any 20-hour week contracts? I'd love to be your employee if you can meet my conditions. Unfortunately, for now, that's not the way it is. So I'll usually work, to get back to the question, I'll work around 4 hours on and off. I take a nap every day. I take a nap for about 30 minutes to an hour every day, and take my dog out again, go to the gym, cook some healthy food. I'm, not married, no kids. So it makes prioritizing my day to day extremely easy. I was considering, like, what would my life be like if I had those other responsibilities? And I imagine if I had this condition and I had to work and support a family, that would be very tough. So that's, still not off the table. I think, those kind of goals are still available to me. But for now, I'm just really grateful to have the time where I can just be so healthy and prioritize myself and my house and my dog. And that's a day to day. It's been pretty great because I have all that time, but it does get boring, especially when I'm on the bench and I don't have an active consulting contract. I just get so bored, and there's only so much you can do in the gym. There's only so much you could walk your dog before the dog's like, "What are we doing here, dude?" So I actually started volunteering last year. I emailed my city, and I've become an usher at the local plays. Tomorrow I'll be volunteering at the Children's Hospital, and that just brings me so much joy to be active in the community, because consulting has helped me support myself. While I'm looking for more active opportunities and coasting on my savings and my other investments, I'm able to focus on what I love to do, which is work with the community.
Yeah, and that's something I've always admired about you is you're so willing and it seems like you prioritize giving back, right? And I think it's one thing to be dealing with something and be facing something, but I get the sense that having people around you that, yeah, in kind of a noble cause, right? Like if you're giving back to a community, if you're participating, it almost forces you to surround yourself with like-minded people.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I've met already a lot of kind people in the volunteer program. One thing I'll mention too, because consulting is on and off, being an independent consultant, subcontracting through consulting companies and things isn't always available. I decided, hey, maybe I should diversify my income a little bit. So I started a tutoring business for math and science for high schoolers and middle schoolers. It hasn't really taken off yet, but I've just been emailing around to public schools and been in touch with a vice principal that I've known since college. He's a really good friend of mine. He started the business with me. And so, with my background in technology consulting and business, and his background in education, he was a science teacher for 10 years. He really knows the curriculum and he knows what students are like these days. And so, I think we have a pretty great offering. And I'm basically learning the hard way how to market our company and how to market ourselves and things like that. So, it's been a challenge. And I'm really excited for when it does kind of pop off and I can get into either a classroom or work one-on-one with students in the library or in their homes or online and just see how it goes. I'm pretty nervous. Being independent is great because I have this so much freedom, like I was describing, but it's also nerve-wracking because you don't have money coming in every month. And you have to make sure at the end of the year or at the end of the contract, you have enough to support yourself while you look for those other opportunities.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a little bit of some of your entrepreneurial spirit. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, how you came about to realizing maybe just thinking to yourself like, okay, I think it's time to go independent. I think I want to go off on my own a little bit as opposed to maybe doing the standard 9 to 5.
That's a great question. Thank you so much. So when I was a full-time employee, I was building Anaplan models. I had a boss and I had also these needs. I had, my hand condition that prevented me from doing certain things. And I needed a lot of time off and I was asking for a lot of time off. I was maybe not as professionally as I would these days, but I was demanding time off. And my boss eventually said, no, like we're running a business here. We have this team that we need to get our goals met and you're taking too much time off is basically what I was told. And that was the moment when I realized, wow, this is not as flexible as I thought it was. From my perspective, I had done everything that I needed to do in the job description and the time off that I was requesting for was justified in my opinion, but not everyone's going to see it that way ever. And so I decided to leave that job in 2021 and I'm very fortunate to have some role models in my life that are also entrepreneurs. My dad has been running his own business for since I was basically a teenager. He has a website that sells specialized computer hardware. It's a very niche business, just like Anaplan Consulting is super niche. And so that's become so talking to him about the ways I was feeling at the time and seeing about how he does things and his attitude towards things has been a inspiration to me. I also have a cousin who started his own real estate business years ago, is a great boss to his employees. He works a lot, which isn't really my style, but I told him, hey, you're my mentor now. I'm going to talk to you about what it's like to be an entrepreneur. We're in different fields, but that doesn't matter. So those two resources to me have been great and have helped me gain some confidence along the way when I wasn't feeling so confident.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You actually stole a question I was going to ask you about who inspires you, but that's fantastic. I guess to follow up on that, what would you say are like 2 things you learned from either your dad or your cousin that you may have incorporated into your kind of toolkit?
I would say that what I've learned from them is that it's okay to make sacrifices, and those sacrifices need to be made. I don't buy those fancy, delicious groceries when I'm not active on a contract. I try to take vacations in a way that are more affordable. I would say also, I just try to adopt their attitude. Not so much put on a facade of, ultimate confidence, like everything's awesome all the time, but more like everything will be awesome eventually. And just keep knowing that if you invest a little bit every day of time and effort, it doesn't have to be 40 hours a week. A lot of weeks it's only 10 or 5 hours a week that I am working on my ventures. And just a little bit leads to some pretty amazing results over time. And seeing it for myself has been extremely rewarding. But it's that attitude that they present that I try to adopt.
Yeah, I like what you said there. That was also like one of the realizations I had too. Is when it comes to your personal spending, is it does matter, especially if you are an entrepreneur, and especially if you're solo. Like, it does matter what your cost of living and what you're spending your money on sometimes, right? Because that could be the resources that you could deploy to your business, for example.
Exactly. It just keep you afloat for all the longer, so you can make that contract that seals your year.
Exactly. Oh, wonderful. I want to kind of pivot a little bit. I know we've talked about a little bit about you and your journey and some of the inspirations you've had. If we kind of pivot a little bit now to more Anaplan related
Yeah.
questions here. So when it comes to Anaplan, I guess what's your take on this state of the universe? Because I know we last spoke a couple of years ago. The industry has been evolving, just the EPM industry as a whole. There's been some new competitors in the landscape who have popped up recently. How do you feel Anaplan is positioned nowadays, and are you keeping your eye on any other softwares?
So I am still 100% Anaplan. I think it is a good idea to keep my eye on other products and other competitors of Anaplan, especially, hitching your raft to one boat is never a great thing. That's why I'm starting all these other ventures. But I think Tableau and Pigment might be something that I should be looking at. I have some colleagues that are in those ecosystems, and I'm looking forward to reconnecting with them and hearing their take on those products. I'm nervous about it because how am I going to learn this product when I'm working so slowly on a computer with my voice or with just the stylus and trackpad? Only no more than 4 or 5 hours a day. I think it'll be a challenge, but I think it's something that I need to do. I think I have the brain for it. I have the skill set for it. It's just a matter of time and putting in that time. So, also with the Anaplan ecosystem, I think that being independent and trying to get support from Anaplan has been surprisingly great. I think their master Anaplanner team has been extremely responsive. Once you get that authority or that the number of projects under your belt and Anaplan knows what you're capable of, they are willing to support you. They instructed me very well on how to get my own Anaplan workspace. And they've always been great about answering my questions. One thing that I think is a challenge, and I think this is a challenge for anyone, whether it's a small company or an independent consultant, is getting customers. Anaplan sends their customers to their best partners, and that's just the way it's going to be. I'm having a hard time seeing, and granted, I haven't put a lot of effort into this yet, but I think that referring a big project to an independent consultant that's just one person would be a tough thing for Anaplan to do. And maybe it wouldn't be in their best interest either. So I've been marketing myself mostly to those partners. And that's how I've been able to sustain my career. But I'm super curious and I'm super interested to see how Anaplan could involve some of us independent folks with their customer ecosystem.
Yeah, actually, I'm happy to share some experiences I've had too, because I think we're kind of on a similar path when it comes to that. I've also had some experience working with partners in the past, doing subcontracts, and I think you're right. Like, I think Anaplan, it may not be in their best interest to refer work to like independent consultants, right? And I think one thing I've started to do is like shift away from the mindset of, okay, it's not just me. I want to stop thinking about it in terms of me, right? Like, I think I've started pivoting into like, okay, I'm trying to build an Anaplan practice. I'm no longer an independent consultant. So what are the steps you have to take to build that up? And that takes you on a different journey. But to answer some of your questions, like around like the independent consulting side, there can be times where a customer is just looking for a staff augmentation, or maybe they're looking for someone that may not price out like some of the big guys, right? And that's kind of some avenues I've seen some other freelancers find a home a little bit, but I almost feel like you got to know the right person to even get into those conversations, right? What's been your
Sure.
experience with landing some of these?
I've not landed one. I have all of my work has been through consulting firms. I've never worked for Anaplan. Of course, I know a lot of people who do work for Anaplan now, thanks to the previous work I've done at those partner firms. Um, but yeah, I think that when I need to, that's something I will need to pursue. Um, right now, it's especially in the new year, 2024. It's still extremely early. It's been mostly my current connections with old consulting partners, and as well just replying to people on LinkedIn. You put Master Anaplanner on
Hmm.
LinkedIn, wow, people find you and they email you. So, fortunately, very fortunately, I feel extremely fortunate that a lot of my connections and prospects come from LinkedIn, and they find me. I don't have to do too much prospecting myself.
Yeah, it's great. I think that's something we share in common is just social media has been such a huge force for both of our success. And I think it's sometimes people take it for granted or may not appreciate it as much as maybe they could or should. And um, I know that there's some folks out there that single-handedly rely on LinkedIn for a career.
Yeah, yeah, I believe it, and it's really been a great thing.
Yeah. So back to some Anaplan here. So if you think about just the development of Anaplan over the past 2 years, is there
Hmm.
anything that stands out to you in terms of new functionalities that have come out? And I guess just maybe even from a personal standpoint, the way you've been interacting with Anaplan, the product and platform differently, as opposed to maybe, you know, pre-planual 2019, that sort of thing.
Hmm. I would say that, and I tell this to my customers too, is that Anaplan and building in Anaplan models is a lot of doing the very same thing over and over again in slightly different ways. Like, for example, they're building their monthly forecast. We do what's called building a snapshot. Most listeners are probably Anaplanners, they know what that is. I would say that I think um, no one's talking about versions anymore, which has been great because most of us by now have experienced nightmares with default versions, and just creating your own versions list in the model is always the way to go. For example, switchover dates. That cannot vary by business unit or by hierarchy. That can only be one thing for the model. That to me is a massive weakness. I'd rather have a switchover date than be able to be changed by an administrator of the model who's only in the production model, not a model builder. What I think is not as known to newer model builders or even model builders who have 3-4 years of experience. Maybe they've got almost 20 or so implementations, and they consider themselves experienced. Um, Using the version settings and time settings does require a model builder license. That is a cost to your clients. Um, I always try to build models and tell teams that I work with to build their models in a way such that you could have an admin role that only accesses production. They don't have to know much about the development of the model at all. They just run the business process. Running the business process means changing the switchover date or, managing data. We have data dashboards where a lot of times hierarchies change month to month, week to week, fairly often at big companies. So they need to be able to do that easily without the extra cost of a model builder license. And there is a way to solution the models to do that. And that learning for me a few years ago when I was working on my first big solution architecture as the first leader of the solution. I had that realization, and I think that's pretty powerful. Where you can tell customers, hey, you don't need to come into version settings every month. You come into version set or model settings rather only when you're developing.
Yeah, I like that a lot actually. The custom versions piece in particular, it's pretty much become the industry standard. I would hope at least. Not too many models nowadays are being built with those native versions because in a way that it almost restricts you, right? If you choose to use the native versions, it limits some of your flexibility. You can't do sum and lookup. Can't do a host of other things. So yeah, I would hope that people are taking your advice and building custom versions. Is there
Thank you.
some, yeah, is there something you would say? I know you spoke a little bit about your injury that occurred. Is there something about having to deal with that's forced you to think about Anaplan models in a new way or in a better way?
um, that's an interesting question. I think mostly I've just been telling prospects and telling teams that I work with that I'm not going to build the model. You're going to build the model. It's still a very mouse heavy application. I've tried, I've produced a couple of videos with Anaplan a couple of years ago about using Anaplan hands free. It's not apparent in those videos, but it's not easy. It's just like Excel. I've tried using Excel hands free and with 100% voice. It's extremely slow if you do it with 100% voice. And a lot of functionality cannot even be done by voice. So the way that I get around that is I need help. I tell people I will teach your team how to build the model. I also tell when I'm introducing myself to a new customer or we're kicking off a new project, I say, hey everyone, we're going to work for 50 minutes and we're going to take a 10-minute or 5-minute break every hour. And almost like a non-negotiable. We're not going to sit there for 2.5, 3 hours with no breaks. I think the longevity of the workforce depends on balanced work conditions. So it definitely has changed my approach for sure. I used to take on a lot of the responsibilities. This new mindset I have helped me realize delegation is awesome and people want the credit. I gave up taking all the credit. I used to really, in my early career as a consultant, I wanted the credit. And that was a weakness. I think sharing the credit or giving it to someone who really needs it on their resume can be very powerful because those people will shock you with their skills and their motivation. And giving them the keys to the car and saying, hey, why don't you take the drive for today? It flatters them and it gives them the responsibility that they really crave. And it leads to really amazing results with the model and with the skill set of the team after the consultant leaves.
Yeah, one thing you said there about taking breaks, I think is so important because I actually have this saying: if you're getting frustrated with Anaplan, Anaplan's going to win every single time.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and sometimes taking a break and honestly just stepping away and coming back to it a little bit later, you'd be surprised how you can come back to the same problem you were dealing with, and just maybe you come back and you see things differently, or maybe it's just taking a step back and just having a fresh outlook on where things are, and maybe you just decide like, hey, maybe that approach I was taking, this wasn't the right approach. Let's start over.
That reminds me of a funny story from my last project last year. I was working with a very talented Anaplanner, new Anaplanner, and every couple of weeks, maybe once a month or so, we would get stuck on something and say, maybe we'll it's not due for another week. Let's just think about it later. The guy would come back and say, I was just out on a walk yesterday and it came to me. I was in bed last night and it came to me. And taking breaks, your mind just kind of deals with it on its own. You don't have to actively think about it to come up with solutions. You try your best during the workday, and then when you're walking your dog, the solution will come.
Yeah, and I think that would be something that I think maybe we both would share with any new potential model builders out there too. Is like, it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to not, find the solution in one sitting. Sometimes it does take multiple sittings to find the solution, even for master Anaplanners like us. It still to this day, I find myself learning new things, and it's what I think it's what we love as implementation consultants is that journey to find those solutions.
Mm-hmm. When the cell has the right number in it, feels great.
Mm-hmm. What would be like one piece of advice you would give to any new model builders out there?
Last time I think I told them to find a mentor, so I'll give a different piece of advice today. I would say to a new model builder that if your formula is really long, like long if statements, especially long if statements is a common example, but there are others. It's usually a sign that you should break it up into multiple line items. Trading complexity for sparsity is almost always a good trade. Having extra cells is oftentimes with Anaplan's engineering and the way it's built is a lot of times extremely fast and way faster than having a long formula. And also, it's easier on your brain. You can do it stepwise. You can have a massive grid that's, sparse, right? It's just a lot of cells are blank, but that's okay because maybe that builds the hierarchy the way you need to. You can find your exceptions extremely quickly. You can eliminate your exceptions extremely quickly, and it's better for the model, and it's better for the team and the maintenance of the model, because a new model builder looking at a massive wall of a formula with if branches everywhere is so intimidating, and there's a lot of ways you can mess it up, and you can eliminate a lot of that personnel risk and that knowledge risk by just building things one step at a time, one formula per line item with your if statement at the very end.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One of the things I've been saying to folks recently, it's just I found a growing affinity towards using booleans, and especially when it comes to those long formulas, I'm like, break out your conditions into booleans, right? It's okay to see clause 1, clause 2, clause 3 in those booleans as opposed to writing those long nested formulas.
That's a great point. Yeah. Speaking of Booleans too, I see this a lot with new model builders. If you ever see if condition, then true, else false, simplify that. Just put condition.
That's right. You don't need to write that if then else if it's just one conditional.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah. Have you ever seen or come into a situation where you've entered a model that maybe somebody else has built and you come into it and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah. Basically every time that I go into a model that someone else built.
Yeah. So, I think one thing I like to do is also when you're building it in terms of using a lot of Booleans and simplifying it, I would hope at least that for anyone else that's coming into the models to take a look at the back end and maybe they got to make some changes or they're just exploring. Hopefully you've done it in a way where it's simple enough where a brand new person from the outside can just follow and retrace your steps.
Yeah, that is tough because models are huge and there are hundreds of modules, thousands of line items potentially. And using the notes can be great. Without the person who built it, though, I found it's just so hard to just play Blue's Clues and figure out what the model's doing. And I think keeping an eye on the user experience, keeping an eye on the end result is most important, because maybe you find a way to fix it, but you're not going to use the module that the original model builder built. Maybe the expectation is, hey, here's the way this person built it. Can you fix it with this stuff? Sometimes it's no, I can't. I need to build it in a way that's going to meet the requirement, but it's going to be something different. And that can lead to a lot of success. And you may have to use your consulting skills to convince the team that this can be built in a new way. And figuring out the way that the previous person built it and then fixing it is a lot of times the long way, where if you just figure out the way to fix it, you can skip the whole investigation part.
That's right. Yeah, there's sometimes where you run into situations where you're trying to optimize uh, like some business process, and sometimes you end up discovering like, well, wait a minute, it might just be better if I rebuild it altogether from scratch. Right? Have you ever had instances like that?
Yeah. Hopefully it's not a huge lift. Sometimes it's just one model or one equation. But if it is a huge lift, then you got to be careful about how to scope it and everything.
It's true.
But I've been in that situation before, and yeah, it's just weighing the costs and benefits and communicating that effectively to the stakeholder.
Yeah. I think that, and like sometimes if you've ever been in a situation where you've been asked to, like, hey, here's a model, go look into it and go learn what it's doing. And
Mhm.
oh, by the way, you got 2 days or 3 days. I've always found that to be a bit of a trivial exercise because, one, there's this presumption that any person can go in and just learn what a model's doing inside and out in 3 days. Um, and two, that puts an assumption that even if you are a certified master Anaplanner, like there's honestly times where I can open a model and I'll be like, I don't know what this is doing, and I'm not afraid to admit it, but we're going to need more than 3 days.
And I feel like sometimes in those situations, you feel like your credibility is on the line. You feel like, if I tell this person we need more time, or if I tell this person that this challenge, this model is not built to best practices or something, then that may be a reflection on yourself. But whether it is or
Mhm.
isn't, you got to say that.
Yeah, sometimes that imposter syndrome can kick in.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mitch, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Is there anything you would want to leave our audience with? Any last words of inspiration for the audience?
Thank you for listening. Best of luck to all of you model builders out there. Feel free to reach out via my social media channels. You probably can find me pretty easy. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for coming on the show, Mitch. It's always great to catch up, and wish you all the best in your journey ahead.
Thank you, Daanish, and thank you, DSI Consulting, for having me on the show.
Thank you.